Okay, fine. Okay, guys. In the last class, we are done with the uh, okay. We are done with the metal cutting and machining. So today we'll be discussing metal casting. Okay. So metal casting. So let me give an overview on what is metal casting and what are the different type of techniques we are using, and uh, and also we'll be seeing today not only the syllabus, we'll be seeing so many questions today. Unlike in last class what we have done, we have uh, more we have discussed more concept and we have done only little problems. So what I thought is that let us solve so many questions today, and through questions we'll be learning some concepts, and thus uh, both of them, like questions and the concepts, will be cleared at one time. So that's the reason why today I'll be discussing more questions. So let's proceed with some concept first. Okay, fine. So this is a simple definition of metal casting. You might have already studied about this thing in your BTech or maybe in your coaching institutions. So 1 minute. Yeah. So this is simply but nothing but the process of pouring molten metal into a hollow cavity and allowing it to cool and solidify into a desired shape, right? So pouring molten metal into a hollow cavity, and then you're trying to cool and solidify into a desired shape. So this is what is your hollow cavity, and this is your metal liquid that you have poured into, and then after pouring the metal liquid, and you're trying to allow it to cool and solidify. Once you cool it, you're getting the solidified casting out of it. So this is a simple single piece casting, and this is your complicated casting. Complicated in the sense like you have some elements that will support the casting so that your casting will be appropriately the size and shape that you have designed, right? So let's say you have designed with some sizes and shapes. So if you want to maintain that, you have to have all these things, like you have to have this pouring cup, this down sprue, then this runner, this riser, and this, if you want to produce some hollow sections, then you have to use this cores. So all these things are called as gating elements. And not only you're trying to do it in one box, you're trying to do it in two boxes. So the bottom box is known as drag box and the top box is known as coke box. So what are the industries that are useful making use of this metal casting? Automotive industries, cookery, aerospace, railroad, jewelry, all the things. So obviously aerospace. So you're writing this examination of HAL, right? So obviously aerospace industry is very keen about this metal casting techniques. Fine. Let's move on. So what are the advantages and what are the limitations? I think I'll just have a overview, like I'll just read on the fly. So you can see here, these advantages are like complex shapes and of complex shape of the object can be easily produced. In the sense like, let's say if you want to produce a complete engine block, right? So if you want to produce an engine block completely at one go, casting is the only technique where you can be using to produce this engine block in one go. And if you have seen an engine block, it will be very complicated and complex in shape. So one, that is advantage. And second is like it is less expensive. It's not taking more of the money. Then you can produce both the materials like ductile and brittle. So ductile is a soft material, and brittle is a hard material. See, both are two opposite materials, and these two opposite material types can be produced in casting. And you can see large sizes of objects can be produced by casting. So these are the advantages. Disadvantages are like castings are not having smooth surface finish. Why it is not having smooth surface finish? Because if you are doing a sand casting technique, so this is the wall, let us say. So what happens if at all you are trying to pour something into the cavity, this liquid metal is coming in contact with the sand particles at this edges, right? At this face of the object. When the sand particles are coming in contact with the metal, liquid metal here, what happens? After solidifying, that impressions of sand particles will be there onto the casting here. So that is, it means that it is having very poor surface finish. So that is the reason why it is not having a good surface finish. Obviously, secondary, manufacturing techniques like grinding has to be done, so that if you are doing a machining, I mean not only grinding, machining in the sense you can do turning, you can do dry grinding, milling and all. So secondary manufacturing operations like machining has to be done onto this object, fine, to improve the surface finish. And it is very laborious in the sense like you have so many people working around in the foundry section. So foundry is the section where this metal castings are taking place. So very laborious. It needs very labor intensive process. Next, you have so many possibilities of casting defects because gases can come inside and trap inside the casting and then get solidified. That gas particles which are trapped inside can be points where there is a stress rising. Those are called stress risers, and because of that the object might get failed, right? So there's a possibility of defects of casting. And also the uniform mechanical properties are not attained in this thing because your cooling is starting from the sideways through the wall and it is entering into the mid section, right? So as the cooling gradients are changing from the outside to the inner section of the casting, as the cooling gradients are changing, the temperature gradients are changing, the cooling will not happen uniformly. Because of that, you will not have any uniform mechanical properties. So these are the advantages and disadvantages of your metal casting. And these are the selection, process for metal manufacturing itself. It's not a big deal. So next is pattern. So if you are discussing about a sand casting, from now on, you keep in mind that we'll be discussing the important aspects of sand casting. Okay. So after sand casting, then towards the end of this lecture, we'll be discussing about some miscellaneous casting techniques. Miscellaneous in the sense like investment casting, such casting and all. So please keep in mind till I say every casting technique, everything what I'm discussing from here is about sand casting. Okay, fine. So what is pattern? Pattern is nothing but pattern is a replica of final casting, which is to be produced with some modifications, and the modifications are in the form of elements. Obviously, if you have some metal casting that you want to make. So let's say you want to make some object like this. Okay. So this is your casting. That means this is your real object that you want to manufacture. So what you do, you design this, right? You design this. Now what happens? How do you do this sand casting? So you have this two boxes as I told, right? So you put some pattern inside this, then you ram it. Then this is not the pattern. Let me show that. Okay. So this is your box. Then you put the pattern. And then you remove the pattern. Once you remove the pattern, what happens? You'll get some hollow cavity here, right? And in this, you'll pour some liquid metal, and then you get this metal casting done, right? So this is your pattern. So this pattern is replica of this casting, fine? So this pattern will not be having the same dimensions as of your casting, because once you try to pour liquid metal into this, some shrinkage will happen and some sand particles will be stuck onto this casting. You have to remove that. So there are so many problems with that. So that's the reason why you have to do some modifications to the pattern and then put and then ram it. Fine. So that are that modifications are in the form of allowances here. Okay. So what are the different allowances here? We have shrinkage allowance and contraction allowance, draft and taper allowance, machining allowance, finish allowance, shape or wrapping allowance, distortion or camera allowance. Please remember there are 5 different type of allowances that you are allowing onto the pattern, so that after the solidification you get the exact size and shape of the casting that you are intended to have. Okay, fine. So this is a simple first one, that is a shrinkage allowance. So this is your simple pure metal casting, in the sense like you have only pure metal, it's not alloy, you have a single material. If you have a single material, this is how a graph of temperature versus time looks like. So what happens, initially you have some melting point, like here, this is your pouring temperature. Pour in the sense like you are having a molten metal temperature. Once you pour that into cavity, slowly as the time progresses, what happens, the temperature reduces, cooling happens. Once it reaches some point, then there won't be any change in the temperature, but there will be phase change happening. So from B to C, there is some phase change. It means that from here to here you are in liquid phase, but from B to C you're changing into solid phase, and this is called phase transformation. After complete phase transformation, then what happens? Then from here to here, in solid phase only, again your temperature is getting reduced, and then it is attaining into some temperature, that is your ambient temperature or room temperature. This TF is your phase transformation temperature. Okay, so this is your simple, unary material graph of temperature was time. Okay, pure metal. Now what happens? Why this is important? Because let's say this is the real product that you want to produce with L, B, and H. But what happens once you try to pour this liquid metal into a casting? What happens? There is shrinkage happening because it will depend upon your coefficient of thermal expansion. You can see the shrinkage will depend upon coefficient of thermal expansion. If your shrinkage, if your alpha is positive, then contraction will happen upon cooling. If at all your coefficient of expansion is negative, then expansion of the object will happen upon cooling. Okay, and sometimes there won't be any change. If your coefficient of thermal expansion is 0, there won't be any change upon cooling or heating. Okay, fine. This is positive upon cooling. This is negative upon cooling. Positive upon cooling, contraction. Negative upon cooling, expansion. Please remember this point. Now what happens? As most of the materials or metals will have positive coefficient of thermal expansion, in the sense it will contract upon cooling. So if you are trying to contract it, so what happens? The pattern dimensions will be different, because let us say if you want to design 10, 5, and 8. Let us assume this 10, 5, 8 is your dimension of your object. But your pattern should be little larger, right? It has to be 11, 9, and some, so 10, 8, and 5, right? So 11, 9, and 4, 6 it has to be, because if you are increasing the dimension of pattern only, after cooling it will come to the real dimension that you are designing, right? So that is how you have to give some extra dimensions to the pattern if you are having positive alpha, and if you have to reduce the dimension of your pattern if you are having a negative alpha. So this is how, and where the pattern allowance is important, that is also important. So from A to B, it is called liquid state, and it is called shrinkage is happening at the A to B also, and then that is called liquid shrinkage. From B to C, there is some shrinkage happening, that is called solidification shrinkage. From C to D, there is some shrinkage happening, that is called solid shrinkage. Okay, and A to B and B to C, these are both are in liquid states, right? This is complete liquid state, this is solid phase liquid state. So in these two things, we can't do anything about, we can't do anything with the pattern, but we can do only the solid shrinkage, in the sense from C to D only the solid shrinkage will happen, and that C to D compensation can be done by pattern, and A to B, B to C compensation of liquid can be done by using riser. Riser is one of the gating element that we'll be trying to use for casting. So we'll be discussing this little later, but as of now, you remember C to D is the place where there is only temperature that is reducing from C to D in solid phase, and that shrinkage that is happening from C to D can be compensated by pattern. Okay, by increasing the dimensions of pattern or by decreasing the dimension of pattern based on whether the alpha is positive or negative. Okay, so that is what is this. Like this, I have these things, all these things, whatever I've discussed here are written in statements here. That's it. So these are the simple shrinkage values here. So bismuth and invar are having negligible shrinkage, that is alpha is equal to 0. Cast iron is having some 10 mm per meter. It means that for 1 meter of length, 10 mm will be shrinkaging. That is for cast iron. Aluminium is 13 mm per meter. Copper is 17, steel is 20, and brass is maximum, that is 24. Okay, and please remember, solid shrinkage is maximum for brass, which requires large size pattern, because you can see the shrinkage alpha, right? It's very high for brass. That's the reason why you have to increase your pattern as much as possible, so that it will shrink as much as possible and get to the end product here. So pattern should be very bigger if you are trying to choose a brass as your casting element. And liquid and solidification shrinkage. Liquid and solidification shrinkage will be compensated by riser. So, okay, liquid and solidification shrinkage is maximum for aluminium, which requires large amount of risers. So this point is very important in this context, and this will be important when we are discussing riser element. Okay, so these are the two important points that you have to take from this slide. Next, this is a simple formula problem. Let's discuss this. What is this? a cubical casting of 50 mm size undergoes volumetric shrinkage. So there is a 50 mm size, in the sense 50 cross 50 cross 50. 50 cross 50 cross 50 is the dimension of your casting, and it is undergoing your volumetric solidification shrinkage of 4% and volumetric solid shrink contraction of 6%. There is no riser used and pattern making allowances is not considered. What is this? So if they are saying that there is no pattern and there is no riser used, so obviously it will be shrinking. They are saying what is the final size of a casting. Obviously, what is that? So they are saying that like 4%, that is your volumetric solidification shrinkage is 4%, and volumetric solid shrinkage is 6%, and this is your liquid shrinkage, right? Fine. So this is 4, this is 6. So now from B to C there is some shrinkage happening. From C to D there is some shrinkage happening. If at all you're trying to use riser, then this would have been compensated. If you're trying to use pattern allowance, then this would have been compensated. But you're not using both of them, so there is no compensation happening. Only shrinkage is happening. So volume of material at B is equal to 50 cross 50 cross 50. That was the dimension that you're trying to pour in. And volume at C is how much? 4% of volume is reduced. So from 50 cross 50 cross 50, that is 50 cube. If you remove the 4% shrinkage, how much is left? 96% is left. So 0.96 into 50 cube is the volume at C. And from C again, it has reached to D. So now this volume, 96% of 50 is again reduced. How much? 6% is reduced. So that's why it is 0.94 into 0.96 into 50 cube. So this is the volume at D, right? So now you want to find the size of the casting. That's the reason why you can use this A cube as each side, and then you can find out the size of the casting. So this is how you have to attack the problem. And one more important point here is, so as we have discussed that like most of the cases we have positive alpha, so contraction is happening if you're trying to cool, and if sometimes there is an alpha value which is negative. If alpha value is negative, the material will expand upon cooling. So one kind of a material here is gray cast iron. So you can please remember here, by cooling gray cast iron, there is a possibility of expansion of the material due to conversion of carbon into graphite flakes. It means that it is changing its structure from BCC to HCP. What is BCC? It is body centered cubic structure to hexagonal closed packing structure. As it is changing from one structure to another structure, because of the density differences of each structure, the expansion of gray cast iron is happening upon cooling. Please remember, upon cooling. So that's the reason why negative shrinkage, it means that it is expanding. So can I ask you one question? If at all I am trying to do the casting technique, do the sand casting with gray cast iron, if my size, let us say if my dimension of each side of this casting, let us say this is some 10 and this is some 8 and this is some 6, let us say. So this is my real designed casting, like the designed product. So what should be my pattern size? Can anyone say? It should be bigger or smaller? What do you say? Pattern should be bigger or smaller? Anyone? For gray cast iron. Yes, your pattern should be smaller, obviously. No. Jason, if at all you are putting a bigger pattern, then it is bulging more, right? So you don't want that to happen. You want to get it reduced. So obviously you have to put a smaller one. Yes. So for gray cast iron, it is ulta. Good, Harini. Very good. Fine. Next. So this is another problem with the same thing, gray cast only. Obviously, you can do this problem. It's not a big deal. And the next allowance is draft or taper allowance. So what is this draft or taper allowance? Because here you can see you have some kind of legged structure here, U structure, and this U structure you want to remove this pattern from this sand. Once you're trying to remove, What happens if it is exactly vertical? So what happens when you are trying to remove? There is some kind of sand particles which will be stuck onto the surface and it will come out, and that sand particles which is stuck onto this will create some extra void space. When you try to pour into that, the sand casting will not be good. So what you do, you provide some kind of a taper to this thing, so that while removing, taper is very small. Please don't give so much of taper, because obviously there's no taper required. The taper is very small. It's only half a degree. For very long lens, they'll give you half degree, which is not at all considered for it in the design point of view. We are putting the taper to easy removal of the pattern. So for easy removal of pattern, you provide some taper for this kind of structures, and that is called taper elements. That's it. Next is machining elements. You know that. As I told you, the sand particles will be coming in contact with the metal casting here, and as you try to remove the casting out of it, some kind of impressions of sand particles will be left onto the casting, which means it is having very poor surface finish. So you want to have a good surface finish. What you do, you remove this top layer which is having inclusions here, or some kind of inclusions which are there onto this. You try to remove that by using some machining techniques. When you're trying to remove the material or machining techniques, what is happening to your original casting size? It is trying to reduce, right? So when you're doing machining, it is trying to reduce. So what do you do to compensate this reduction of machining? When you're trying to reduction of the size due to machining, you increase the size of pattern, right? Once you increase the size of pattern, the same amount of casting will be there with some inclusions, and then this extra amount, what is there, you can remove by using some machining techniques, or you can do milling, lathe, or maybe you can do some grinding, so that when you're trying to remove, it will reach to the exact position of the casting. So this is how this machining allowance. So machining allowance, you have to reduce the size of pattern, right? Please remember this. So casting objects are not having smooth surface finish. To get better surface finish on the casting, machining is required. Due to machining, size of the casting will be reduced. Obviously, size of the casting will be reduced. To overcome this, machining allowances are provided under the pattern. This value will be depending upon the size of the silica grains and the surface finish required for the casting. So if you want a very good surface finish, more amount of material will be removed. If your sand particles are very bigger in size, again more amount of material will be removed based on the size of the particles of grains and also the surface finish that is you are trying to achieve. The increment of your pattern size will be depending upon that. Okay, fine. So this is what another example here. So now what happens, there is a casting like this. These are the dimensions. So now what they are saying is that for each side, you can see that calculate the dimensional pattern for casting shown below by considering machining allowances are 1 mm on each surface. So this circle is one surface, this is one surface. So each one is a surface, right? This is surface, this is surface, this is surface. So now these are the dimensions of casting: 100, 150, 80, and the hole is having a diameter of 50. Now, if this is a machining allowance, then what will be the pattern size they are trying to ask? So obviously, you have to have 1 mm on surface. So both the sides it has to be compensated, right? Because if you are doing the surface, right, both the sides it has to be compensated. So 1 or 2 will be the dimension. After removing 1 mm on each side, then it will become 100. Here you have to keep 152. Here you have to keep 82. But for internal surface, you have to reduce the dimension. You should not increase size because it is a hole, right? If once you reduce the dimension only, then you can do some machining and increase it to 50. Please remember, for internal dimensions, you have to reduce the pattern size, and for external dimensions, you have to increase the pattern size. Please remember this. Okay. And next is shaking or wrap allowance. Again, same thing for easy removal of pattern. What you do little bit of shaking like this, right? Because of shaking, you're molding, patterns. I mean, sand, whatever the hollow section or the pattern. When you're trying to do this pattern shaking, what is happening to the cavity here? The cavity will be increasing its size. So to compensate that, what you'll do, you have to reduce the pattern size, so that this shaking will make to the exact shape, and then you can see here. So let's say if you want a 100 mm of size here, because of shaking, it is the cavity size increasing to 1 or 2. You don't want to happen that. What you do, you keep your pattern size as 98 because you're trying to reduce the size, And then after shaking, it is getting to 100, which is the exact shape that you want to have, right? So you're trying to reduce the pattern size. After shaking, the whole cavity shape will be, size will be getting to 100. 100 is the thing that you want to have, right? This is what is shaking or wrapping elements. And last one is distortion elements. Distortion in the sense like when you have this length to thickness, like this thickness is very small and this length is very high, right? So based on the L by T ratios, what happens if you are trying to put this thing into the casting? I mean, this is your casting, okay? So after cooling, what happens? The castings will become like this because of the shrinkage stresses that are occurring at this important sections. These are the weaker sections here. So because of that, this kind of bending is happening. So if you don't want to happen that bending, you create some kind of a negative. I mean, because you put like this pattern, then after some bending, it will come to the exact shape. So this is what is called distortion elements. And what are the different pattern materials we are using? Wood, metal alloys, and plastics. 3 of them can be used. Generally, if you're going for a simple sand casting, you see wood is the material that is used for your pattern. And it is made up of teak, mahogany, all these woods. And you can use sometimes metals and alloys also as a pattern materials. What are they? Aluminium, cast iron, brass, steel, etc. are the things that are used for cast material. Then next is plastics also can be used. Polystyrene, PVC, foam, thermocol, and all. So how these plastics can be used? Because plastics are very light in nature. I mean, the weight and the density is very low, so it can't sustain the ramming pressures. So this can be used for some different techniques that I'll tell. How it will be used? You just put the plastic, you put the ram, and then you don't remove the pattern here to create the cavity. What you do, you directly allow liquid metal onto this pattern. Now what happens, as the plastic is very light density, the liquid metal will burn this. And excuse me 1 minute. Okay, fine. So this is okay, 1 minute. Okay, so you try to allow this liquid onto this pattern, and as this pattern is having very light density material, like plastics are very light density, right? So what happens, this will be burning, the plastic will be burning, and it will be evaporating. As this burning and evaporating is happening, there is a space created. Through the space only, this liquid material will be taking the shape of this small cavity. Fine, this is how plastics also can be used for pattern materials. And there are different type of patterns. I'm not going to delve into each of them. One is single piece pattern. You have a single piece pattern here, single piece. Then you can go into a split piece pattern. Why you want to go to split piece pattern? If at all you have some withdrawal problems, because this, if you are placing like this into your mold cavity, I mean, your after ramming, what happens? Sand will be stuck here. When you're trying to remove this, sand will be disturbed. So there is no way you'll be removing this single piece pattern out of this mold cavity, so that without any disturbance of the sand. So what you do, you make it into 2 halves. So that's the reason why you're splitting your pattern. Next is loose piece pattern. So these are the loose pieces that you put here. That is called loose piece pattern. Then you have some match plate pattern. This is this is a plate which is acting as a medium between 2 boxes, that is scope box and drag box. So this is scope side pattern, and this is your drag side pattern. So to match the scope side pattern and back side pattern, you are using some match plate here. That's why it's called match plate pattern. And this is your cope pattern, drag pattern. So these are the gating elements we have here. So if you are including these gating elements into the pattern itself from the cope side and the drag side, then it is called cope and drag pattern. Then there is a sweep pattern. A sweep pattern is not the exact replica. Till now, what we have the exact replica. Pattern is called exact replica of your casting. But here, sweep pattern is not your exact replica. It's a simple, 2D, pattern here. What you do, you take and you sweep around the axisymmetrical axis. Once you sweep axisymmetrical axis, the cavity is created. So please remember, sweep pattern is not exactly the replica of your metal casting. Okay. And there is a follow board. So this follow board is used to make sure that if there are some weak sections, the pattern, when you're trying to ram, that these sections will not be disturbed. So you're using some follow board to make sure that when you're ramming, these weak sections will be not disturbed. And last one is skeleton pattern. If you are trying to do some kind of structures like this structures, so you use this skeleton patterns. And there is one more thing called core. Core is nothing but, let's say if you want to have some kind of hollow sections, you want to have this hollow section, hollow cylinder. So how do you do these hollow sections? You put some kind of extra core material, because this is sand particle and you're putting some core already before pouring. Once you pour, this place where you're putting core, that place the filling will not take place. After solidification, you remove the core, you can get the hollow section. So core is designed to make the hollow sections. Okay, and this core is should be placed at right places, because if you're placing it right place only, you'll get a proper hollow pattern. If you are not placing it right sections, then what happens? It is the hole is going somewhere else. And also when you are pouring some liquid metal, this core can float up and down because of the buoyancy forces of liquid metal. So to avoid that, what you do, you are maintaining the proper identification where you have to place the core. So the identification is called core print. So you're putting it here, core print. And also you can support the core by using some chaplets, so that it won't be floating up and down due to the buoyancy forces of liquid metal which you are trying to pour. Fine. Next is, this is all core design, and these are core prints. I told you, right? Core prints are projections on the pattern and the recess in the cavity to position the core properly. Chaplets, you're trying to use them as support the core. And these are the problems. And what are the properties of molding sand? Silica, clay, water, additives. Silica is something but sand. Clay is like, it is kind of a binder. Water, you want to add some water to make sure that this clay, silica and additives are mixed properly. Additives are nothing but, it will give some extra properties to the molding sand. Okay. And what is extra property? These extra properties are refractiveness. Obviously, you're molding, I'm talking about molding sand. Okay, I'm talking about the molding sand here. So what are the important properties of molding sand? Refractiveness. Refractiveness is nothing but, as you're trying to pour high temperature of liquid metal into the mold cavity, the sand should not expand or compress because of the temperature of liquid metal that you're trying to pour. So refractiveness in the sense, the ability of molding material to withstand high temperatures of liquid metal without fusion. Okay. Next is permeability. So you have to allow proper amount of gas particles to escape from the mold cavity to the atmosphere. So you have to have proper air gaps between the molding sand, and that is called permeability, and which is inversely proportional to time. What is the time? Time is nothing but time which is the time at which the gases are trying to escape. So if we are taking more time for the gases to escape, it means the permeability is less. If the time is taking very small, with small time only the gases are trying to escape, then permeability is more. The permeability should not be more or less, it should be optimum. Okay. So this is the percentage of water and this is the permeability. As the water percentage is increasing, the permeability will be increasing and then decreasing. And this is a simple problem. And permeability number is given by V into H by PAT. Okay, here it is there. V into H by PAT. Permeability number is, V is volume of the air passed. So you have some standard value of volume that you have to pass. That is 2000 centimeter cube. And H is the height of the specimen. P is the pressure difference at which that you are putting the pressure difference. Because of pressure difference only, this gas will pass from one side to another side of the molding sand piece. Some specimen will be prepared, right? Some standard specimen. And it is having some height H and area of cross section is this. And this is the time that you're trying to measure. So you're putting this pressure difference, you're trying to measure this, and V, H, A are the standard values. Then you'll get the permeability number. And another is the sand should be properly flowed into some typical sections, and the strength should be good. Green strength, dry strength, hot strength. Green sand is nothing but the sand which is having some moisture content. It means that when you're adding some silica, you're having some clay, you're adding some water, you're adding some binders. So when you're adding some water, your sand will be in some kind of wet state. When the sand is in wet state, that is called green sand. So then after pouring liquid metal, what happened? Some amount of wetness will be reduced because you're trying to pour some liquid metal into it, right? So then it will become dry. After drying also, still some amount of heat is left inside the liquid casting, metal casting, right? And that will make the sand hot. Fine. Green is nothing but the sand containing moisture content. Dry, there is no moisture content. Hot, it has become so hot because of the temperature drop of metal casting, and the temperature drop will be transferring into the sand particles, right? Next, your molding sand should be very hard. It should not, the molding wall should not deflect, or molding wall should not deform when you're trying to pour your liquid metal into the cavity. Adhesive property is very important. It means that bond formation between two different particles, and cohesive property, bond formation between same particles. These two are important properties for your molding sand. And collapsibility. Once you try to ram and you're trying to pour liquid metal and all these things, after removing your, after solidification, you have to break the sand, particles. Once you want to break the sand, it has to give a proper collapsibility also, right? So if you are unable to collapse it, if you're trying to hit hard to remove the particle, casting out of it, the casting might get, some cracks on it. So you have to have proper collapsibility. And what are the additives that you're trying to use? Sawdust, flour, linseed oil, dextrin, molasses, coal dust, graphite, and each is having its own, property which is giving to. So if you're adding sawdust and wood flour, collapsibility and permeability are good. Linseed oil and dextrin molasses will make sure your mold hardnesses are good. Coal dust and graphite will make sure refractiveness and good surface finish are maintained. Okay. So these are the gating elements. It's very important now. So what is the gating element? I told you already. So this will be these gating elements will make sure that your casting is filled for filling. This casting hole is the right. So this is having a little ulta here. So the pouring basis is here. This is your down screw. There is choke here. There is a runner here. Then it is entering into this, and there is this core. Core is for making your hollow cavities. This is your liquid molding cavity, and then it is coming, and then riser. Riser will compensate the shrinkages, right? This is your core box, drag box. Bottom box is rag, upper box is core. So what are the important gating elements? Pouring basin, there is a strain here, there is a sprue, splash core, runner, ingot. All these things will be discussed here in this diagram. So this is the proper diagram for gating elements. So it will start, you bring your metal, liquid metal from some furnace using a ladle. Then you'll try to pour into this pouring basin. Then it will slowly enter into this. And after here, there is a ceramic strainer, which will filter the impurities here. And then it will enter into the sprue, and slowly it will hit this splash core, because from here to here, as there is a height, it will attain the velocity, and it will hit the splash core, which is made up of ceramic material. If you are not having this splash core, what happens? It will hit hard, so that this molding sand will be disturbed. So not to disturb this molding sand, what happens? You are pouring this thing and you are hitting it here. As the ceramic splash core is put, there is no disturbance for the molding sand, and it will take a turn here. Then this is called skim bob, where lower impurities will be collected here, higher impurities will be collected here, and slowly it will enter into this runner. And then this is the entry point of your molten liquid metal into the cavity, and that is called ingate. And this liquid cavity will be filled. Then it will try to rise up to the riser. So riser will be compensating the shrinkages. Liquid and solidification shrinkage will be compensated by riser. Okay. So these are the objectives. So casting yield is defined as casting yield in the sense what? You are trying to pour all these things. After solidification, it will solidify from here to here. So pouring basis is solidified, sprue is solidified, skim bob is solidified, runner is solidified, riser is solidified, which are not important. What you do, you cut this, This is the only important thing that you're trying to use at the end, right? Because this all will be removed. So, but you're trying to pour and get solidified, right? So that's the reason why there is a yield that is occurring. So casting yield is nothing but volume of the casting that is important, divided by the total metal that you are poured here. So total is volume of casting plus volume of the gating elements. So this sprue, pouring basin, runner, riser, all these things are gating elements. So volume of casting divided by the total volume poured, or volume of casting divided by volume of casting plus volume of the gating elements. So casting yield, more the casting yield, more the good. Your material is less. Okay. And then you're trying to design each of the element. Pouring basin is having some kind of a dimensions here. It is having some, you know, smooth curvature here. Slowly it will come, take a turn, it will go into this. You can't directly pour, right? Happily it is slowly pouring, right? So to our turbulence, trying to pour slowly. And then you have this sprue here. So sprue is not is the place where it is the section between your pouring basin and the mold cavity. Okay, so this is not a simple. You're not having elements. You're directly putting your mold cavity directly connected to the sprue. So as this is the entry point of liquid metal into the mold cavity, this is called ingate. Please remember, ingate is nothing but the entry point of liquid metal into the cavity. Okay, this is the cavity and this is the entry point, hence it is called ingate. So this sprue is not straight. It should not be straight. It should be tapered form. Why it is tapered form? If it is straight, what is happening? There is something called air aspiration effect. Why this air aspiration effect is coming? The air aspiration is coming. First, we should know what is air aspiration effect. Air aspiration effect is nothing but gases may enter into the mold cavity through some liquid metal if pressure anywhere in the liquid metal becomes negative, because this is atmosphere, this is atmosphere. But when you are trying to pour here, somewhere in between the sprue, the pressure goes negative. If the negative pressure is creating inside some material, inside this, the air which is there here will be sucked inside, and that will be mixed inside the cavity and will create a very defective casting. So to avoid that, what you're trying to do, you're trying to make a tapered sprue. So the section here, the radius is very high here and very low here, or big radius, small radius. Big radius at the entry of sprue, small radius at the entry of exit of the sprue. So this is your top portion, bottom portion. So then you're trying to put a tapered sprue. So to avoid air aspiration effect, you're putting a tapered sprue. So this is the derivation. You have to prove that how it is tapered. So we have this. You have using this de Bernoulli's equation and all these things to prove that it should be a tapered sprue. Okay, so the sprue should not be straight section. It has to be a tapered one to avoid air aspiration effect. Okay, and next is design of runner. So runners can be two runners. One is cylindrical runner, another is trapezoidal runner. So cylindrical riser can be used to minimize heat transfer of liquid metal, and trapezoidal runner can be used to minimize the turbulence and discharge of the liquid metal. So based on the importance of heat transfer or based on the turbulence, you can use either of the sections for the runner. And next is ingate. Ingate is nothing but it is the entry point. So it is the actual point through which liquid metal can enter into the cavity at a controlled rate. So there are four different type of gating systems. One is top gating or vertical gating, next is bottom gating, next is parting gating, and another is step gating. So what is top gating? Simple one, simple pouring basin, then there is a sprue, and you're trying to pour your liquid metal from the top, right? It's kind of a normal bucket and tap. So we have in your, washroom, maybe in your kitchen, what happens? You put a bucket and then you're trying to fill your bucket using tap, which is coming from the top. So this is your top filling. You're filling it from the top, and you have to remember this is your 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, and as you're trying to, as this is the height. So please remember this is the height of cup, this is the height of sprue, and this is the height of molding cavity. Height of cup, pouring cup plus height of sprue will be given as HT, that is total height. So if you want to find the velocity at this point, it is nothing but under root 2g into HT. That is your velocity of liquid metal at ingate. So velocity of liquid metal at ingate is Vg, that is given as under root 2g HT. HT is nothing but Hc plus Hs. Okay, and these are the important points for your top gating system. And if at all you want to know how much time you have to fill this cavity if you're using a top gating system, the time of fill will be given like this. This is an important formula. Time of filling for top gating is nothing but volume of the mold cavity. Volume is nothing but area of the mold cavity into this height. Volume of the mold cavity divided by area of gate. So this is the area of ingate, right? This is the area of ingate into velocity at ingate. I repeat again. Time of filling for top gating system is nothing but volume of the mold divided by volume of the mold, volume of the casting divided by area of the gating, the area of the entry point into the velocity at the entry point. Please remember Vm by Ag into Vg. This capital V denotes volume, small v denotes velocity. Please hope you get this point. And this Vg can be calculated by 2G HT. I told you already here, right? And bottom filling is nothing but you're directly connecting your element to this bottom. So slowly it is going to fill from the bottom, right? So this is your bottom filling. This is the diagram. So again, this Hc plus Hs is your Ht, and this Hm is your height of filling. And the formula for this is this 2 by under root 2g Am by Ag into under root Ht minus Ht. All this big formula is there. If you want, you can copy this formula, or else you can take the snapshot. Or else you already know it. Should I skip it, or you want to copy it? What do you say, guys? Okay, copy then. Done? If it is done, please let me know, then we'll proceed. Okay, so here Am is the area of mold, Ag is the area of ingate. Ingate in the sense like the area at this point. Okay, Ag. Okay, Ht is nothing but height of cup plus height of sprue. Hm is the height of the mold cavity. That's it. And please remember, the time of filling of this is this, and time of filling of top gate is this. Top gate is this. TFT, time of filling of top gate. TFB, time of filling of bottom gate. And special case is nothing but if height of the mold and height of the what you say, if in bottom gate system, let us say if height of the mold and this HT and HM are same, then what happens? Then time of filling of bottom gate becomes twice of time of filling of top gating system. So in bottom gating system, if HM and HT are same, let us say this HT and this HM are same, then time of filling of bottom gate should be equal to time of filling of twice the time of filling of top gate system. Okay, this is the special case. Okay, this is the same thing. And this is parting light gate. Parting light is nothing but you're putting it in between, right? So the bottom section will be filled by top gating system, and the top section will be filled by the bottom gating system. Fine, top gating and bottom gating, mix of that is called parting line. So this is the parting line system. Okay. And step gate is nothing but you have some different steps, and it will fill. First A will be filled, then B will be filled, C will be filled, D will be filled. So everything here first it will fill by bottom, then it here bottom, then bottom, then bottom, like this step gating system. And there is a fluidity test. So obviously you have to have a proper fluidity. The fluid should not be more viscous or like that, right? So it should have proper fluidity. It should not be very fluidy in nature, or it should not be very thick in nature. It should have proper fluidity, because if it is very loose, then it will go and it will take more time to get cooled. If it is very tighter, then what happens? It will reach some points and it will stop. So that's why you have to do the spiral testing. So what you have spiral screw here, then you are trying to pour this fluid, and then you will see before cooling how much long it is going there. Then you will try to measure the length. That length will be indicator for the fluidity. That's it. And then this is your choke area. Choke area is nothing but entry point in gate. So if at all, generally in gate will be having choke, but sometimes screw will be having choke. So choke area is nothing but it is the minimum cross section area in all gating elements. Okay. So what are the gating elements? Screw, runner, and in-gate. These are the three important gating elements here. So if you have smaller section, smaller choke area here, you can have smaller choke in here, you can have smaller choke area here. So wherever in these three, if you are having smaller areas, that is called choke area. And choke area is given by this formula, which is not important much. We can skip this if you want. You can copy this formula, but yet this kind of complicated formula questions will not be asked in HL examination, because you don't have any calculators there. It's a simple concept based questions. We'll discuss that in the coming slides. So there are two different type of gating systems. One is unpressurized gating system, then it is pressurized gating system. Before knowing the differences between unpressurized and pressurized gating system, you should know the gating ratio. Gating ratio is defined as area of downscrew is to area of cross section of runner is to area of cross section of in-gate. So remember, area of cross section of downscrew is to area of cross section of runner is to area of in-gate here, right? So that is your gating ratio. So now the gating system will be unpressurized when your choke area is put at the downscrew. It means that downscrew, runner, and in-gate is there. In these three elements, if your downscrew is having minimal cross section, then it is called unpressurized gating system. Okay, and you can see the ratios here. Gating ratios are given. So see, 1:2:4. So this is your downscrew area of cross section. This is your runner area cross section. This is your in-gate cross section. Out of these three, one is less. So this is called unpressurized gating system. By looking at the gating ratio, you should be able to say whether it is a pressurized gating system or a unpressurized gating system. And pressurized gating system, you are putting your gating ratio at in-gate. Okay, so see, minimal cross section at the in-gate. So this is your pressurized gating system. So choke area at gate. Okay, and so this kind of gating ratio is not possible because the choke area at runner is not a good one because there will be some kind of mold erosion happening. So 2:1:1 is not a good choking gating ratio. So obviously, gating ratio will be having one minimal cross section at the starting one or the minimal cross section at the ending one. Between one, there won't be any minimal cross section, which is not suitable, right? So we have 1:2:1, let us say. So both are having minimum. Now, what is this kind of system? Because this is pressurized because at in-gate you're having smaller cross section because this is the entry point only. Because of that, this is called pressurized gating system. Okay, and this is simply formula. Next one is your solidification time. So the solidification in the sense, like previously what we have discussed, how much time we have to, what is the time we have calculated. If you are putting a top filling gate, top gating system, how much time the liquid metal is filling. If you are putting at the bottom, that is bottom gating system, how much time it is trying to fill. You have calculated the time of filling. Now we are trying to calculate after filling, how much time it will take to solidify. That is very important, right? You have to know how much time it is taking to solidify. So the solidification time is given by Churinov's principle, and this TS is denoting the solidification time. Solidification time is directly proportional to V by surface area square. So volume by surface area whole square. Please do not forget this square. Generally, so many people will forget the square. I insist you, please do not forget the square. That's why I'm putting the square in different ink here. That's why I highlighted here and I'm putting in different ink here. So this, if you are trying to remove the proportionality constant, it will become equal to, and this K is your solidification factor. And V is the volume of the cavity, SA is the surface area of the cavity, right? And V denotes the storage capacity of heat. Surface area denotes the heat transfer capacity of the molding cavity. Okay, so if surface area more, heat transfer is more, fast it will cool because surface area is increasing. As denominator is increasing, total will be reducing. Very small time, it will within small amount of time only it will get solidified. If your volume is more, which denotes heat storage, volume is more heat, it will take more time to heat cool, right? So solidification is directly proportional to volume by surface area whole square. And remember, I'm just telling you again, whole square. And these are the simple volume to surface area ratios for cubes, sphere, cylinder, and slab. I think you can easily do that, volume by surface area. And these are the formulas, some problems here, same thing. And next is riser. If you want to design riser, you have to know this thing called cooling characteristic. Cooling characteristic is defined as surface area by volume. Okay. And we can use spherical riser, but the point of contact will be there, and the liquid metal which is around will be solidified easily, and here it will be liquid metal, but which this cavity cannot access this between center part of the cavity, this riser liquid. So this is not an apt one to use. So you can use a parallelepiped or a cylindrical riser. Okay. Next is side riser, top riser. Side is you're putting like this, top riser you're putting like this. Side riser you have 4 sides, all the sides you have heat transfer. For top riser you have only 3 sides of heat transfer. Please remember this point. And these are all some formulas. Okay, next is Keynes method, second way of designing the riser. So what is the freezing ratio is given as surface area by volume. This is your cooling characteristic, right? So cooling characteristic of casting divided by cooling characteristic of riser, we give rise to freezing ratio. And the formula for Keynes method is nothing but X is equal to A by Y minus V plus C, where X is the freezing ratio and Y is your what you say VR by VC, that is volume of riser divided by volume of casting. So after having certain experiments, what happened? They have plotted this diagram, and if at all your point is above this graph, this kind of graph, then it is a very good casting. If your point is lying below this graph, then it is a bad casting. That is what is you have to take from this slide. And next is Naval Research Laboratory based method. Here, instead of using freezing ratio and all, we'll be using shape factor. Shape factor is nothing but length plus width by thickness of some casting, right? So instead of this freezing ratio, what you put, you keep the shape factor here, and y-axis remains the same, that is volume of riser divided by the volume of the casting. So this is a very sound casting and this is a very poor casting. That is how you have to design the riser. And last one is nothing but modulus method. That is your volume of cavity divided by the surface area. So that is what is volume of modulus of the technique. Modulus definition is this, that is volume by surface area. So modulus of riser should be equal to 1.2 times of the modulus casting. Let us say you have already have the volume of casting, you have the surface area of the casting. So if you substitute here, you multiply with 1.2 times of it, then you'll get the modulus of riser. Through this modulus, you can calculate the volume of the riser and volume of surface area of the riser. Okay. And please remember, riser should solidify after the casting, because riser is providing the liquid for shrinkage. If at all your riser is solidifying first, then the liquid will not be compensating the casting shrinkage, right? So volume solidification of riser should be after solidification of the casting. And these are chills. So these are nothing but to make sure that you are having a proper solidification happening inside this. So for uniform solidification, you will be using chills. Chills are nothing but some metallic objects with high thermal conductivity. So what happens at this section, there will be some weak section where the solidification is not happening properly, because heat transfer, but at this point heat transfer is not happening, right? So to extract the heat from here, you're putting some external chills, okay, to extract the heat from this weak sections for having proper and uniform cooling, okay. And chills can be internal also. If you're putting internal chills, what happens? You have to use the same material of your metal casting. If you're using aluminum, aluminum should be the chills material, okay. And now internally, if you're putting, what happens when at the center, what happens when your cooling is happening from the sideways? At center, what happens? The cooling will be ununiform. To make sure the center also will be having some uniform cooling, you put some internal chills with the same material of casting, and that will also release heat and will be having uniform cooling here. Okay. And paddings are the same thing like chills. From weaker sections, you are putting it some kind of paddings here to extract heat from that and making a uniform solidification. And these are the miscellaneous casting techniques. Those are sand molding, we have discussed, shell molding, investment casting, full molding, CO2 molding, centrifugal casting, die casting, slab casting. All these things I think you should be able to know, or else I'll be discussing that. But before that, we'll be solving some problems. Okay, problems in the sense some objective questions will be solving. Are you ready? Hello, guys. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to ask each and every question here. Please answer me this. What is the first one? So if you type the answer like this, one dash answer. Don't type because if you are putting some A B C D A B C D, I can't understand. If you're answering for the first question, you put one dash answer. What is the answer? What is the lower molding flask also known as? Hello? Lower molding flask. The bottom box. What is the bottom box known as? Yes. Good. Answer is A. The top box is coke box, drag box. The answer is A. Next one. The entry point of liquid metal, what? Obviously, gate. Obviously, I told you, in gate. Very good. Next. Easy one only. We'll go through this very fastly. Come on. A small funnel-shaped cavity at the top of mold into which metal is poured as what? Obviously, it is sprue, right? Excellent. Next one, right? It's sprue, right? So you are trying to pour like this, and this is your cavity, right? So this is what is called sprue. Okay. Next. Come on. Okay, I'll do it a little slow. Come on. I think. What about the other guy? Come on, Santosh. I think you should also be answering these questions. 4. Okay. Which of the following is used to support cavity from the inside? Obviously, chaplet. Good. You have seen, right? Good. Next. The riser is a reservoir of molten metal provided in casting so that hot metal can flow back into the mold cavity when there is a reduction in volume of the metal due to solidification, right? Simple. This is nothing. This is not a question at all. Simple question. Next. Sorry. Next. Excellent. 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 Very good. So this kind of questions will be asked mostly in HL, not more than this, but sometimes they might ask some different questions. But anyways, okay, next, come on. We have so many questions. We have to go fast. Come on. Yes, again it is proof. Good. Next. Obviously, pattern. Okay, next. Now the thing is this. Yeah, now tell me, this is what? So obviously, yes. bottom mode is the right answer. You're right, not riser. Excellent. 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 Next. All right, the same question has repeated, sorry. Okay, same question has repeated. 11th one, tell me the 11th one. Okay. Okay. So first you have to know what is freezing range. What can anyone who has already done that? What is freezing range? Hello. Okay, it's nothing but it's like thermal gradient and rate of cooling. Okay, if your rate of cooling is reduced, the fluidity of metal will what? What do you say? If rate of cooling is reduced, it means slowly it is cooling. Then fluidity, it means that it is good, it is high or less. What do you say? So let me tell you one more thing. If your fluidity is very high, I'll take two scenarios. Yes, rate of cooling reduces means. Okay, 1 minute, 1 minute. Sorry, sir, not rate of cooling. I think it is freezing range in the sense I think the question, I think there's a mistake here. Yeah, you're right. So if at all rate of cooling is increasing, in the sense it is fastly it is cooling, right? Okay. If your rate of cooling is decreasing means slowly it is decreasing. If it is slowly decreasing, okay, fine. If it is taking longer time to cool, now will the fluidity should be more or less? Or let me do in the reverse way. If your fluidity is high and if your fluidity is less, who is getting cooled fast? High fluidity one is getting cooled fast time, or lower fluidity will be cooling for the fast time? Which one will be cooled fast? Higher fluidity one or lower fluidity one? What do you say? Again, I repeat, there are two scenarios. This is having more fluidity, this is having less fluidity. Out of this, who will cool fast? No, high fluidity in the sense what? Yes, high fluidity in the sense what? Let's say if you have some metal and you're heating it, you heat till 100, then the fluidity is not good. You heat till 1000, the fluidity is good. So this is having more temperature, right? This is having less temperature, right? Am I right or wrong? Right or wrong? So yeah, so this will take little lesser higher time for cooling. So as this taking more time, it means that if your cooling rate is reducing, in the sense your fluidity is getting increased. Okay, next one. Next one, come on. Excellent. So generally, the value of this n will vary from 1.5 to 2. Okay, so answer is 2. But we have put 2. 2 is answer, but generally it varies from 1.5 to 2. But for our gate examination and all, n is 2. Please remember that. The formula is this. So Ts is equal to K into Va by Sa to the power of 2. Okay. Next one. Easily you can say this. Come on. Obviously, Gray Caster and I discussed, right? Yes. So alpha will be negative or positive for this coefficient of thermal expansion. Is it negative or positive for Gray Caster? Obviously negative. Excellent, excellent. Come on. Next one, 14th. So if you have some dissolved gases inside the molten metal before solidifying, if you want to remove that, what do you do? You're saying that you want to put into vacuum. Very good. Any other answers? Harini has answered. What about others? Yes, answer is C, because you can pass some inert gases which will not change the composition of your liquid metal, yet it will dissolve the this dissolved gases will be mixed with inert gases, then they'll come out. And also, or else you can pour the liquid metal in the vacuum. As you're trying to do that in vacuum, there is no chance of dissolving gases, right? Answer is C. Next one. Okay. So solidification of casting doesn't depend on which pattern. Type of metal will be mattering, right? Type of metal will be mattering, right? Like, because if you have aluminum, if you have the cooling rate will be changing, right? It obviously type of metal is important for solidification. So A is wrong. A is wrong answer. I think the question here, which doesn't depend, it's not. See, read the question. Solidification of casting doesn't depend on which factor. Solidification. Think again. Santosh, solidification formula is given as Ts proportional to V by Sa whole square, right? So you are saying C. Obviously, you can say geometric relation between area and surface is very important for solidification, right? Yes. Surface tension is irrelevant here. Surface tension is irrelevant. Type of metal is important because aluminium, cast iron, that, this, copper, whatever mild steel, all the materials which you're trying to do will matter, because for each one it's having its own melting and freezing temperatures. So type of metal is important. Second, thermal property of metal also is important. Third, thermal property in the sense like what is the thermal conductivity of material and what is the thermal diffusivity. All the things are very, very important. Geometric relation also is very important. Geometric relation means volume by surface area of casting is very important. Which is irrelevant here, surface tension, right? So surface tension is fluid property, right? And which will not affect your solidification time. Okay. The surface tension will tell you wetting capacity, how fast it can wet surface. So next one. So read the question properly and let us know. Okay, before that, I should ask you, I know you know inclusion, you know surface tension, you know aesthetic. Does everyone, do everyone know here this, what is this mushy zone here? Yes or no? Mushy zone? What do you mean by mushy zone here? Guys? Oh, mushy zone is like, okay, this one, both liquid and solid. Let's say you have some binary diagram, two-phase diagrams, right? So if you have two-phase diagrams, so your phase diagram looks like this, right? Remember, at least remember this. This is your material A, this is your material B. Okay. So this is your liquid phase, this is your solid phase, this is liquid plus solid phase. Or if you don't want binary, you can simply draw a simple diagram like this. This is liquid, liquid plus solid, and this is your solid. And this is called mushy zone. Mushy zone means the zone at which liquid and solid are existing together. Now tell me the answer. Okay. Fluidity. Obviously, one is important, right? Whether this it is in liquid and solid state, it is important. You are right. Viscosity is very important for fluidity. Why you are saying surface tension is not important for fluidity? Let's say if your surface is not having proper surface tension, the spreading capacity, then it will not go very fast, right? So obviously surface tension also is important for fluidity, not for solidification. For fluidity, surface tension is very important. Surface tension is fluidity property. So this also is important. Inclusion in the sense, like if you have some particles which are obstructing that, obviously fluidity will be reduced. So all the things are very important here. It is 1, 2, 3, 4 actually. So I'll just remove these slides and answer is D. 1, 2, 3, 4. All of them are very important for our fluidity. Next one. Don't be in a hurry. Take your time and give me the answer. No problem. We have time here. Here it is a revision class. Happily you can take your time and think and tell the answer. But in examination, HL examination, you should not waste your time. And also I request, as there is no negative marking, attempt all the questions. If you are not knowing the answer also, just make a random guess and put the answer and come. It might help you. Okay. So what you're saying, it is a function. What is the function of force used? Obviously, this is a simple question, man. There is no to think. Next one. This is for hollow regions. Next one. Okay, this question I think I should answer because okay, I just let me someone say I answer, then I'll see. Somebody can answer this question. Yes, right. C is the right answer. C is the right answer. Yes. So what does this first sentence means? Rapid cooling produces solidified skin or shell. Yes. What does this mean? So let's say I should explain this. It's very important. You should know the solidification of casting because let's say this is your casting and you poured liquid metal into this. It is full of liquid metal now. Okay. Now the temperature of liquid metal here is around some 1500 degrees centigrade. Okay. the ambient temperature is around 30 degrees. Let us assume that. So now what happens? The temperature gradient is very high. What is temperature gradient? Delta T. Delta T is what? 1470, which is very high. If it is temperature gradient very high, the temperature gradient is occurring at the walls, right? These are the walls. So please remember, if you are having a high temperature gradient because of super fast cooling at this junction, I mean the temperature gradient is very high at this. So what happens? Very small grains are formed here. Okay, and as you go inside, little bigger sizes of grains are formed, because now the temperature here is not 30 anymore. It is some 150 something like that, and again here it might be some 500. So from 150 to 1500, the temperature gradient will be less compared to this, right? From 500 to this temperature gradient. So as you're going inside, the temperature gradient is reducing. As the temperature gradient is reducing, slow cooling is happening. As slow cooling is happening, bigger grains will be formed. And after some time, some dendrites also will be formed like this. Dendrites, some dendritic structures also will be formed. To avoid the dendrites only, you are putting some chills for uniform cooling. Okay, internal chills are put here. So please remember, thumb rule: fast cooling, small grain structures; slow cooling, cores that are big grain structures, coarse grains. Now tell me, small grain structures are soft or hard? Small grains are soft or hard, or coarse grain structures will be soft or hard? Can anyone say this? This is soft, or this is soft, or this is hard, or this is hard? Fast grains are hard. Okay. I mean, these are softer. What about others? Jason has answered. What about Harini? What about Santosh? Come on. Yes, small grains are hard. You're right. This is the small grains are hard. Excellent. Please, you should remember this. So fine. So that's why rapid cooling will give some very skin or shell kind of structure which is very hard, which is leading to some kind of very bad ununiform cooling. Okay. Next. What about next one? This kind of questions are asked in engineering service examination, but yet HL also might ask these questions. We don't know. Please, I think you should be able to. Okay. Does everyone know about this kind of questions? Should I explain the pattern of the format of the question? Yes or no? You know this question, this kind of questions? You know. Okay then. Okay then. Fine. Then okay. Then answer the question. Okay. Then answer the question. So assertion is like they are saying some statement, and the reason should support the assertion. If both are right, sometimes both will not. Okay. Okay. So Jason is saying it means that chills are used to reduce shrinkage porosity. Okay. And then reason is the function of chill is to increase the rate of solidification in a critical region. Okay. Yes. Obviously, chills will reduce the shrinkage porosity. Why? Chills are extra materials that you are putting inside the material, inside the cavity, right? So obviously, when the contraction is happening, that will give the extra material and which will reduce the porosity. And next, there are some microporosities which will be created because of dendritic structures. Okay, when these are some dendrites, right? When two dendrites are forming, when two dendrites are meeting each other, there are some microporosities that are formed. So to avoid these microporosities, to avoid these dendrites, you are putting some chills. Obviously, chills are used for this, right? First is good. And second, the function of chill is to increase the rate of solidification, right? So obviously, you're putting chills to increase the rate of solidification, thus by reducing this dendritic structures. Obviously, this also is right, and explanation also is right, right? So answer is A. Yes. Next one. This is a very simple question. Answer is B, right? Shrinkage. Parameter producing contraction of canting shrinkage. Next one. So which of the following is not true? Contraction solid is from freezing to freezing temperature, room temperature. Yeah, contraction will be there, no? Why it is the answer is D, no? Obviously, contraction is associated with phase change. Obviously, when phase change also is happening, the contraction will be there. Answer is D, which is not right. Answer here, it is not true, right? So this is D is the right answer. D is the right answer. Yes, 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 yes. Next, come on. Okay, this is easy one. Come on, tell. Some questions are very simple. Okay, fine. Next one. Jason, here we are not sure about whether positive or negative because shrinkages are having positive or negative values. Here he is saying the question is asked what is having negative. So negative in the sense you are reducing the size of the pattern. So for draft you are giving some taper, so that is leave it. For shrinkage it might be positive or negative, leave it. Shake, as you are shaking your size is increasing, so you are reducing. So shake allowance is the right answer. And machining obviously it is positive because you are increasing the size. But for machining allowances, the internal dimensions you have to reduce the size. That you have to remember. Okay, answer is C. Next one. Yes, easily. I told you three only, right? Wood, teak, mahogany, I told. Plastics, I told you. Some PVC, polyurethane foams, I told you. Metals, I told you. Aluminium, brass, and all. I never said about ceramics, right? Obviously, ceramics is not one of the pattern materials. Good. Next. Uh, this also can be told easily. Tell me. Which one of the following will not give good dimensional accuracy in the presence of moisture? Let's say, okay, what about Harini? And what about the other person here? Santosh, can you please answer? Please, it's right or wrong, it doesn't matter. You should participate here so that we can learn from our mistakes. Santosh is around here. Please answer the questions. Answer is A. Yes, wood. Because wood is the problem. Because in moisture, wood will be absorbing the moisture and it will change its properties. So wood is not good in moisture. So that's the reason why if you go to a foundry section, anywhere in the foundry section, or else if you're going to place where the patterns are making, if you go to a section, because in foundry there are sections, right? So if you go to pattern making section, so the moisture, the maintaining moisture content in that room is very important. So that's the reason why you maintain proper humidifications, or maybe you'll use some air conditioning systems to maintain the humidification, humid content inside the room. That so that will make sure that the wood will be that you're trying to pattern that you're trying to make will be getting the exact dimensions, or else it will be spoiling it. So moisture, in presence of moisture, wood is not good. Okay, what is the next one? Next answer. Okay. So size of the pattern depends upon size of the casting, obviously, number of castings to be pattern, obviously, dimension. Obviously, all are right. Excellent. Next one. Okay, shake is right, but here two answers are there. Both are having some problems here. The draft also is for removal problem only. Shake also is for removal problem. So I think this both can be going for that option. So this is a little uh, what you say, some kind of ambiguous question. Fine. Okay. Draft also you're giving some angle for easy removal, right? Yeah. Next one. This is easy. Come on. Yes. Obviously. Obviously. Good allowances. Machining. Next one. Yes. Excellent. Metals. You're right. Because wood, plastics, and also they have some. Anyways, we are not using like ceramics at all. That is discarded at all. Wood is having some problem with moisture, and plastics are having some problems with their rigidity. So obviously, metals will give good things. Next one. Okay. This is very good now. Come on. In which set of system aspiration takes place? Vertical, right? Vertical, right? Because here, this is what is this? So this is vertical, right? Vertical getting system, right? Vertical, right? Yeah. Next one. Come on. You should be able to answer this question easily. Okay. What about others? Okay. So actually, 1:2:2 is also right, but generally that kind of ratios will not be there. So 1:4:4 is right answer. You're right. What about next one? A also is right answer, but here I think options are very ambiguous, man. Because obviously the in-gate is put at the down screw and then it's called non-pressurized only. But why I'm saying is that compared to the other cross sections, this is more or less. So that's why I'm saying that this is unpressurized. The gating in-gate is having a very good amount of area, so it won't be much pressurized compared to the 1:2:2. That's the reason why I'm putting 1:4:4. 1:2:2 is the right answer. No problem. Next one. What kind of a question is there? Okay, okay. Okay. Actually, top riser is there, open riser is there, but there is no bottom riser actually. So I'll tell you riser. So riser means like when you have this molding cavity, if you're putting on top, that is top riser. So open riser in the sense like sometimes this open is left like this only. That is called open riser. Internal risers are called blind risers. Okay. So those are called blind risers. And there is one more thing called side riser also. So there is no bottom riser. So you can't compensate by putting riser at bottom. So there is no bottom riser. What the point? Okay. What is the next one? Internal risers also can be put. Bottom only we can't put. That is, I think you should answer easy. What is cane graph? We are designing riser, no? So what is so obviously, uh, so it is like volume ratio. That is your volume of riser by volume of casting, and this is your freezing ratio, right? So this is the answer. Okay, this one. Next, excellent. Obviously, pouring ocean will not do any impurities. Strainer will do impurities, but we can't, it's like heavier or lighter, we can't say. Splash core will avoid the, what you say, the removal of sand at the bottom of screw. So obviously, skim bob is used, right? Skim bob, heavier, lighter, and then heavier. Right. Next one. Obviously, pouring basin. To reduce the rating force of liquid metal into the falling system, obviously you're trying to use this pouring basin, because if you are having, you can't pour like directly like this, because it might, erode this surface. So what you do, you pour like this slowly, it will take a good shape and size, and slowly without erosion it will go into this. So this is right, this is wrong. Pouring basin is right. What is the next one? Okay, so you know the formula, right? I think, what is the formula? What is the formula? The formula is this: freezing ratio FR, or sometimes you can write as X, because you are putting in X axis, right? X, or freezing ratio, is equal to cooling characteristic of casting divided by cooling characteristic of riser, right? So surface area by volume is cooling characteristic of casting divided by surface area by volume of riser. Am I right? Yes. So what is this now? So the surface area, the volume to surface ratio is 2 for riser. 2 for riser, and for casting it is 4, then it is 2. Right. Next. Obviously it is A. Next one. And please remember, if your HM is equal to HT, that is your height of mold is equal to HT is what? HT is nothing but HC plus HS. This is cup, this is spool. If this condition is there, then time of filling for bottom gate is equal to 2 into time of filling for the top gating system. Please remember this important point. Next one. Yes, B is the answer. Obviously, he is asking the velocity of gate, that is Vg. Vg is 2g ht, right? So 2 into uh, uh, what is say G is 9.8 into the length of screw is 0.2 meters. That's it. So obviously, if you do this calculation, you might get 1.98 meter per second. Good. Last, I think this is the last question. 39 is the last question. Come on, solve this. Obviously, molten wax. Good. So how did you feel today? So is it better to have this kind of sessions where I take more questions and make you solve the questions, or you want me to discuss more concepts? What do you prefer, guys? Okay, so okay, so you can't take notes, but because if we are putting the slides for notes and all these things, then it's a waste of time because we are just doing the revision. So revision in the sense you are expected to uh, know all the concepts ahead. This is kind of a revision, just kind of revise, just move the pages like that. So that's the reason why I'm not putting that. So what I'll do, I will just move the slides very fast, but I'll keep more and more questions in the coming sessions so that we can solve. You'll also be very active because uh, solving the questions, and you also don't know the time because discussing the concepts is on one side. You'll be sitting there, and I'll keep on talking. You'll be listening. At some point, you'll get bored also. So what I'll do from the next session, I'll put more and more questions, but for at least 15 to 20 minutes, I will be discussing some important concepts. I'll just put the slides very fast and show what is what. Then I'll so in the next session, today we have solved approximately 39. Let us assume 40 questions we solved. In the coming session, we'll solve some 2 hours, right? So we'll solve some 70 to 80 questions. So that will be good. Is it okay? Okay, good. So if you have any doubts, I'm here. I'll be explaining you any. So let's say if you have some doubt in some concepts and all, please ask me because every time I keep last 5 minutes or 10 minutes for this doubt solving session. So if you have any some doubts about HL examination or maybe regarding casting, metal forming, whatever it doesn't matter the which concept you're asking. You can ask me anything. I'll be able to explain right away right here. So any question you can ask me so that uh, your mind will be cleared so that you can answer attempt your examination in a nice manner. And also as far as I remember, there is no subject weightage is not much clear here. Mostly they'll ask basic questions only, like today what we have solved, right? Today some questions are too simple, not that simple, so they might ask this kind of questions. You see, this kind of question, 36th one, where volume to surface area is 2 and so you should be able to remember this formula, and there is no need of any calculator. You'll be able to answer this question. Or sometimes they might ask this questions also, where this one, the time of if you're filling or water weight is less than like this. So questions will be easy. Weightage, I'm not sure because it's an online examination from long time, and the papers they won't release any paper also. So I'm also not very sure about it, but it will be uniformly distributed. Let's say if you're writing a mechanical paper, then thermal, the design topics, strength of materials, all the things will be uniformly distributed. So you know the basics and go. Don't go dig deeply. And also you will be not having any negative marking, I think. So I expect you to attempt all questions and come. Don't leave any question. Just look at it, intuitively, or maybe take the options and see whether what is the suitability for the question, and then you put the answer and come like that. Any doubts about manufacturing? Complete. I'm telling about manufacturing, industrial materials, all. Any question in materials, manufacturing, in the sense casting, forming, welding, industrial engineering, operations research, inventory control, all the things. Any question if you want, can put here. I'll be able to answer. This last 10 minutes is for some concepts which you wanted to hear from me, from my side. Any question? Okay, okay, I got a question. What does this Kane curve? I wanted to discuss, no, Kane's curve, this one. Where is that? Where is that? Okay, that all is splitting ratio. Oh, this is not this slide, huh? Okay. Okay, let me share another one. Yes. Here. This is how the Kane curves look like. This one, the bottom one. Okay? Is it okay? Yeah. Any other? What about Santosh and Harini? You have any personal questions about? See, this is some one-to-one interaction. You can have some doubts or maybe some concept if you are not clear about it. And also, you have to once you get selected for the examination, I think you have to go for interview also. So, if you have some conceptual, if you want some conceptual clarification, also you can ask. And then in the next lecture, what I'll do, I'll come with some 70 to 80 questions from welding, metal forming, and little bit of materials and metrology inspection. All things will be covering next session. After that session, we'll be covering complete industrial engineering. So it will be done. So all things will be done. And then if you have still any doubts, any questions or any conceptual clarifications, you can mail me. I think I already have given my mail ID. I'm just typing it again here. If you want, you can mail me. I'll respond. Okay. So fine. Tell me if any questions we can discuss, or else we can close the session. What do you say? Okay. No doubts. Oh, Jason and Santosh. What about Harini? Is she there or she left? Okay, fine. Good. I think all three of you are very enthusiastic, and I can see most of the questions were answered by everyone. The two right answers. I'm happy, and please practice a lot and try to solve previous year GATE questions, so that sometimes some questions will be directly they'll be lifting from GATE and they'll be putting into the question paper. So it will be very helpful if you have already solved the questions. And also every time please keep practicing or writing. I mean, if you have some short notes, that would be more better. So please maintain some short notes so that at the end the last revision will be very useful. Interview also is very simple. I mean, they won't ask very tough questions. They'll be asking you some favorite subjects. As far as I know, they'll once you go inside, they'll be asking what are your favorite subjects. Based on that only, they'll be asking. They'll start with some basic. Let's say if you say your subject is strength of materials, so maybe they start with draw this stress strain curve for so and so material, like that. They'll keep on asking questions from that only, like that, like that. It will go. So not much depth. They, because they want to, they only want graduates. So they'll ask only graduate level questions. Don't think much about it. Okay. Okay. Anyways, we can end the session. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.